All right, so what I really want to talk about is why are we here? Why are we in Rotary? What's the point of this? Why do we spend our time and our resources on this organization? And I want to start with the mission. The mission of Rotary is we unite leaders from all walks of life, amplifying their individual contributions to make our community and the world a better place to live and work. And I want to unpack that statement. The first word is unite. We bring people together. Now, we are, as a species, tribal. We like our tribes. And most institutions in our society are designed to reinforce that. They're designed to drive us apart. I'm a marketer by training. My job is to find an audience, to make that audience feel special about themselves, build a real strong relationship with that brand, and basically feel people who are not aligned with the brand are somehow mistaken. So if I am the Democratic Party, I want you to think that Republicans are all evil and only the Democrats are good people. If I'm the Republican Party, I want you to think the Democrats are on the road to perdition and the only thing that can save us is Republicans. If I'm the Catholic Church, I want you to think that Catholicism is the route to heaven. And you know, those Methodists may be going to heaven, but why would you take that chance? If I'm the Coca-Cola company, I want you to think that Coca-Cola is the brand. If I'm the Samsung company, I want you to think that you should be using Android. And if you're an Apple person, you're just a dope. Most institutions are designed to drive us apart. But Rotary is designed to bring us together. We unite leaders from all walks of life, men and women, Methodists and Catholics, Republicans and Democrats, old and young. We bring people together. And I think for most of us of a certain age recognize this has never been more important at any time in our lives than today. We have never needed Rotary more than we need it today. The second word in the mission is leaders. Now, society used to be organized in layers. You kind of worked your way up the hierarchy, you got to the top, and Rotary tended to play in that top layer. But increasingly, Rotary is now a mesh. The world is now a mesh. It's now a network. It's not really that same kind of layered setup. You know, it's more, and the result of this is there aren't those same layers. So Rotary increasingly thinks about leaders as, in the words of our current media campaign, leaders as people of action. People who are willing to get out of their living rooms, out of their houses, into their communities to try to make a difference. So that's the second part of this, is the concept of leaders as people of action, people who are willing to get out there and work in their community and make it better. The third idea in the mission is amplification. I, as an individual, certainly can't deliver food every day of the week like y'all do. I can't teach thousands of children to read. I certainly can't cure a disease. I can't eradicate a disease. But by being a Rotarian, by being part of Rotary, by taking advantage of all of our diverse skills, abilities, interests, etc., I can have this oversized impact on the world that I cannot have individually. So that's the third idea, and there's amplification. By being a Rotarian, you dramatically amplify your impact for good in the world. And the final idea in our mission is this combination of both our community and the world. Most organizations are going to pick one or the other. Most organizations are going to say, well, you know, we got to focus. We cannot do everything. So if I'm the Chamber of Commerce, I'm focusing on Alpharetta. I want to make Alpharetta to be an attractive community where businesses want to locate, where people want to live, where people want to come. So I'm focused on Alpharetta. But I'm not really worried about the world. I'm not really worried about Africa. I'm not really worried about South America. And if I'm CARE, I'm worried about the whole world. I'm worried about poor people in other parts of the world, but I'm not really that concerned about my local community. Rotary is unique in that we care intensely about the health and welfare of our local communities, but there's also room in our hearts for people who we will never meet, who will never have a chance to say thank you because we care for them as well. So that's the mission of Rotary. We unite leaders from all walks of life, amplifying their individual contributions to make our community and the world a better place to live and work. That's the mission, but what's the value proposition? Why should I spend my time pursuing this mission? Why should I get involved in this? Well, there are three reasons. The first and most important is service. It is this ability to impact the world through Rotary. And of course, we've got both international and community service, and we're best known for, on the international side, we're best known for polio eradication. We've now been 60 days without a wild polio case. We have to get that number to 1,095. We have to go 3 years without one polio sample in the environment or one person with wild polio virus. Because as long as that virus exists somewhere in the planet, and we still have jet planes, we're all at risk of polio. Polio is no more than a few hours away from us as long as that virus exists. So as a result, we are immunizing children in 60 countries, more than 60 countries every year to keep this, to finish off eradicating the disease, and that's expensive. Polio eradication costs around $1 billion a year. We're spending around $1 billion a year on polio eradication. The foundation, our foundation, spends about $100 million a year, about a tenth of that. And as you know, we've pledged to raise $50 million a year, and that's going to get matched 2-to-1 by the Gates Foundation. So we talk about this 2-to-1 match. But really, it's a 10-to-1 match. We're putting up $100 million on the $1 billion that it costs. I don't think you're going to find another place where you can get a 10-to-1 return on your charitable dollar besides polio eradication. Now, the money that Rotary provides, that we provide as individuals to polio eradication is important. But where's the other $900 million coming from? Well, it's coming from the government of Canada and the government of Pakistan and the government of Nigeria and the World Health Organization and charitable foundations in the Middle East. It's coming from all over the planet. And the reason that's happening, I mean, why is it happening for polio and not for all the other diseases that are out there? The reason that's happening is, I believe, is because all around the planet there are rooms just like this, full of Rotarians just like us, people of action, who are making sure their countries maintain the political will to finish this off. So as important as our financial contribution is to the effort, I think even more important is the ground roots political will that we insist our institutions stay with this. I don't think this would be happening if it were not for Rotary. I don't think we could maintain this fight this long if it were not for our worldwide organization and its dedication to eradicating polio. Now, most organizations would say, well, if we're going to eradicate a disease, we kind of have to focus. We just can't do a lot of stuff. I mean, that's a big problem. But not Rotary. We spend $100 million a year on polio. We spend another $100 million a year on the other 6 areas of focus: clean water, maternal and child health, literacy, peace and conflict resolution, disease prevention, and community and economic development. Only about half the money that the foundation spends goes to polio. The other half goes to all these thousands of other projects and causes that we do around the world. Our district raises about $3 million a year for service, and we give about $1 million to the foundation. So within our district, 2/3 of the money we raise in Georgia stays right in Georgia. It goes right back into Alpharetta and Cordele and Thomasville and Bainbridge and all our communities in our district. Only 1/3 goes to the foundation, and only half of that goes to polio eradication. So if you do the math, less than 20% of what we are doing is polio eradication. That gives you an idea of the scope and power of the organization to which you belong. It is true when our director, Brad Howard, says, we are 1.2 million volunteers eradicating a disease for only the second time in human history in our spare time, just as something else we're doing. That just gives you, again, an idea of the power of this organization. It's something we can kind of lose sight of when we're in our clubs. We don't necessarily see the scale when you take all of this and add it up. So that's the first reason to be involved in Rotary, this outsized impact you can have on your community and on your world through the combined efforts of all of us working together and working with our foundation. The second reason is something we don't talk about a lot, and it's tied up in an idea called social capital. There's a sociologist at Harvard named Robert Putnam, and about 20 years ago he got interested in to what degree are Americans working with each other in their communities. And he developed the idea of social capital. He says every community needs both financial capital and it needs social capital. Social capital is this working togetherness. And so he developed an index. He looked at things like voter participation and letters to the editor, attendance at church, membership in community organizations, bridge clubs, all these measures of to what degree are Americans working together. And that index increased every year from roughly World War I until the early 1970s. Every year, Americans were a little bit more likely to be involved with each other than they were the prior year. But starting in the 70s, for some reason, that trend reversed. And ever since the 70s, that trend has been declining. Every year, as Americans were a little bit less likely to be involved with each other, we're a little bit less likely to be involved with our community than we were the year before. And I think, again, all of us of a certain age have seen this. We've seen how our country has changed over the course of our lives and the degree to which we've become more polarized, more divided than we were when we were young. Now, he doesn't know why this is. He wonders, well, maybe it's women coming into the workforce because they used to organize a lot of this, or maybe it's demography, and he pretty much shows it's not any of those factors you might think it is. He doesn't really know why it happens. He says the one thing he wonders about is television viewing. That what's happening is that the time we used to spend playing cards with each other or taking each other out to dinner or working in the community, we now spend in our houses watching television, listening to somebody tell us stuff we already agree with. He does know that it's not that everybody's less involved. What's happened is that as the older members of our demographic have aged out, and the younger people have come in, of course at this point I'm now one of the younger people, that the younger people are less involved than their parents. So not true of me literally personally, but of my generation less involved than my parents' generation less community-minded than their parents' generation. Now, so what? So we're not all that community involved. I mean, life's busy, we've got a lot of things going on, there's a lot of stuff happening. What does it matter? Well, it turns out it matters a lot. For example, if you look at the high school graduation rate by state in the 50 US states, and you try to correlate that with different factors like income or geography or demography, the factor it correlates most highly with is social capital. That's the communities in which people care about not only their own children graduating from high school, but they want all children to graduate from high school because they want to live in a community of educated citizens. These communities have higher rates of high school graduation than states in which people are living in their enclaves, not really that worried about anybody else. If you look at the murder rate correlates most highly with social capital. States in which people are involved with their neighbors, they know their neighbors' kids, they know their neighborhood, experience lower rates of violence than states in which people are living in separate little enclaves. So social capital matters. Just by showing up this morning, you are helping to build the bonds, the relationships that make Alpharetta a strong community. Just if you do nothing else other than come here and interact with other people from all walks of life, you're strengthening your community. There are people in Rotary I don't particularly agree with. There are a lot of people in Rotary I don't agree with. There are a good many people in Rotary I don't particularly like. But those are the people I have to work with. That's why it's important for me to be in Rotary. Because Rotary, things only happen when those of us with different points of view come together to make change happen. And Rotary facilitates that. It's super important that I get together with people of different perspectives. That's when I learn, that's when I grow, and that's when a community really can make some progress, is when we can bring people together to solve some of these problems. So that's the second reason to be in Rotary. By being in Rotary, you strengthen your community. The third reason to be a Rotarian is completely selfish. It turns out if you're not a member of a group and you join a group, now it doesn't have to be Rotary, but I highly recommend Rotary. Not a member of a group, you join a group, the chances of you dying in the next year drop in half. It's roughly the same health benefit as quitting smoking, being involved in a group. So I tell you all, go tell your friends, all your smoker friends, keep smoking, join Rotary, it's a wash. You'll be fine. There's a recent study published in the Times, a control study in which they looked at volunteering. And they did a control study, and people who actively volunteer in their community live longer than people who don't. Now, you have to volunteer for eleemosynary reasons. You can't volunteer for selfish reasons. But if you're out there volunteering in your community, it is proven scientifically that you'll live longer than if you don't. It's another study that looked at predictors of long life. And it looked at things like cigarette smoking, exercise, diet. The number one factor for predicting longevity was social engagement, social involvement. People who were involved with other people did better. It was a more powerful factor than whether they smoked or whether they had a good diet or whether they exercised. Now, you still need to do those things. You still should quit smoking. You still should. But it's super important that you be engaged with other people. Now, we know this. We know that we are lions, not leopards. We know we are a gregarious species. We know it is good for us to be engaged with other people. It's good for us intellectually, it's good for us physically, and it's good for us emotionally. So the third reason to be a Rotarian is it's good for your health. And I suggest there's even another reason, which is that by being a Rotarian, you set an example for your children and grandchildren of what it means to be a responsible member of the community. You show them it's not enough to sit in the room and watch the television and listen to somebody tell you stuff you already agree with and complain. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You have to get out there and make a difference. You don't have to be Mother Teresa, you don't have to be Bill Gates, but you have to get out there and try. By being a Rotarian, we set that example for our families. So those are the three reasons to be in Rotary. Good for the world, good for Alpharetta and Georgia, good for you, and good for your family. Now, that's a pretty good value proposition. That's pretty compelling. How's Rotary doing? How are we doing as an organization? Well, if you look globally, Rotary is doing just fine. We're growing like crazy in countries like India and the developed economies. Our foundation is super strong. We're one of the top-rated foundations in the world. We are super close to eradicating this disease. We're just doing great when you look globally. But if you look at the developed economies, if you look at Japan or Australia or the United Kingdom or Georgia, there are some storm clouds on the horizon. And I can summarize it most easily this way. Every year there are more Georgians, and every year there are fewer Rotarians. Now, there are not a lot fewer Rotarians. We've basically been able to hold our own. But the fact is that in 9 of the last 10 years, our district has lost members. That's not good. We are losing penetration in our population. And I suggest it's worse than that because sort of the glory years for Rotary are age 50 to 70. At that point, you're established in your career, your kids are taken care of, you've got some extra resources, you're probably not thinking about relocating to another state. That's when we really have been strong. Now, that's the baby boomer generation. That's my generation. That's the biggest part of our population. We should be growing like crazy right now just with this demographic tailwind behind us. Now, we're here, but where's everybody else? We're not attracting people the way we need to be. And it's worse than that because if you do a study, if you look at this, every couple of years I'll do a survey of 1,000 Georgians on the internet and I'll ask them one question. Have you ever heard of Rotary? 50% of the population of Georgia says no. Never heard of it. Well, they're never going to be good Rotarians if they've never heard of Rotary. I mean, the nature of marketing, awareness, attitude, trial, repeat. You've got to get people through each of those steps. Half the population not even aware of us. And finally, it's worse than that, because if you do the research, and I haven't, but Rotary has, and you ask people, when you think about Rotary, what do you think about? They basically reply, old white men having lunch or breakfast. Now, let's face it. I'm old, I'm white, I'm a man. I love going to my club each week for our lunch. This is an important part of Rotary. You can look around this room and see this is an important part of Rotary. Perhaps it's the core of Rotary. But it's not the whole picture. You can look around the room and you know it's not the whole picture. It does not capture the diversity of our clubs. It does not capture the diversity of our organization internationally. And for sure, it does not capture the service and community effects of Rotary. But as long as a lot of people kind of see it that way, the words are pale, male, stale, and frail. That'll put a stake right in your heart. But as long as that's the attitude, it's going to limit our ability to attract people of action to our organization. We have to increase awareness of our organization, and we have to change people's perceptions of it from, rich old men eating out Romeos to this people of action, people who are concerned about their community. That's the challenge for us. So with that background, there's 3 things I ask every club to do. The first is support polio eradication. Give at least 5% of all the money you raise to polio eradication, not just my year, not just next year, but every year until this is done. Polio is in 2 countries, but it's really in this mountainous region that spans Pakistan and Afghanistan. We say it's in 2 countries, but it's more like it's in several counties. It's in a tiny part of the world. But it's a god-awful place. It's uneducated, it's violent, it's filthy, it's dangerous. It's just a terrible, terrible place. We have now had more than 100 polio vaccinators have been murdered providing drops to children. January 22nd, a mother and her mother-daughter team, murdered by 2 thugs on a motorcycle, giving out drugs in Pakistan, giving out the vaccine, leaving a father and, I think, 5 children. Now, nonetheless, the people in those communities, as dangerous as this is for them, they are willing to pick up those coolers, put those vests on, go out into those communities and give those drops to children. They're willing to take their lives in their hands because they want for their children what we have for our children. They want a world that's polio-free. They don't want their children to get this disease. We're not being asked to take our lives in our hands. We're not being asked to face the prospect of being murdered for taking care of our children. All we have to do is to provide the money that creates the organization, that puts the vest there, that makes sure that the vaccine is there. That's all we have to do. And I just ask every club, I know this seems like it's a long way away. There was only 22 cases last year. Maybe we should just move on and work on something else. This is just taking too long. But here's the estimate. If we stop now, if we say, well, we're close, only 11 cases, we can give up. It's estimated that within 10 years, there'd be 200,000 cases of polio. Again, that's how virulent this virus is. And 10 years after that, that's 2 million children dragging themselves through dusty streets in countless villages all around the world because we gave up. I don't think we want to do that. We owe it to the children of the future. We owe it to all the Rotarians who've come before us, have worked so hard, have put so much money into this, to finish this off. It is the one thing we can do. It is the one contribution we can make to our species, that should our species live 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or 100,000 years, no child will ever get polio again if we stick with this. So that's the first thing. And I say to you individually, if you want to say to your children and grandchildren, I did this. I stopped polio. I eradicated polio. Well, you have to support it. You have to provide the money to make that happen. You should individually all be giving, not a lot. We don't have to provide a lot of money. The world, we got the world bamboozled into providing most of the money. We just need to provide that little bit. So I say to you, as a club, as an individual, support polio eradication until we're done. The second thing I say to every club is ask. How many people join Rotary because somebody asked you to join Rotary? Show of hands. This is how it happens. People don't come into Rotary, like they wander into Kroger. They come into Rotary because someone asks them. And I'll tell you my own personal story. I moved to Atlanta in 1992. A friend of mine named Roger Wilson began to harass me about joining Rotary. Alec, you got to join Rotary. And I'd go to a meeting and I would say, I don't want to join Rotary. I've got this I'm going to be moving around the country. I've got this sort of national career, and it's a bunch of old white men having lunch. Why would I want to do that? But every couple of years, he'd come back and ask me again. And about 10 years later, in 2002, my life changed. I decided, you know, I really like Atlanta. I want to stay in Atlanta. I'm going to build my business in Atlanta. I'm going to build my career in Atlanta. And about that time, Roger, and I should do something. I should get involved in my community. About that time, Roger comes along and says, you should join Rotary. So okay, what the hell, I'll join Rotary. So I joined Rotary, and I am so grateful to Roger for not giving up on me, because Rotary has changed my life. And I had a good life already. Through Rotary, most of my friends today are Rotarians. I've dramatically expanded my friendships through my experience in Rotary. My leadership skills have been so enhanced by working in Rotary and learning how to lead volunteers and people of different perspectives. My knowledge of my state, I didn't grow up in Georgia, my knowledge of my state has been so enhanced by my involvement in Rotary. And I think most importantly, my understanding of and empathy for people who maybe didn't draw the same hand of cards at birth that I drew has been enhanced. I am a stronger man because of my involvement in Rotary. I'm fundamentally a better person by being a Rotarian. And I think most of you would say the same thing, that Rotary has had this effect on your character that you would never have gotten without Rotary. So when you ask someone to join Rotary, you're not asking them to join Rotary because, you know, Scott's trying to make a goal, or you're trying to make your club bigger, or you want Rotary to be successful. You're asking them to join Rotary for them. You're asking them to join Rotary because you want them to experience all the benefits of Rotary that you have experienced. So ask. And we have an enormous, enormous growth opportunity. There are about 10 million people in Georgia, and there are about 10,000 Rotarians. That's 0.1%. So even if I said 99% of our state is just a waste of DNA, they're just taking up space on the planet, we'd be better off without them. And all I care about is the creme de la creme. All I care about is that 1%. Rotary could be 10 times bigger than it is today just on the 1%. And we know that way more than 1% of our state cares about their community, are people of action, want to be involved, want to live a long life, want to set the right example for their children. The problem is they're either not aware of Rotary, they don't understand Rotary, or they've just never been asked to be in Rotary. We have an enormous growth opportunity if we realize that if we want to accomplish our mission of uniting leaders from all walks of life, we got to go do that. We've got to go out and reach out. They're not just going to show up. We've got to go find them, seek them out, and bring them in. And we have to recognize that it's not going to work for everybody. The statistics are within 2 years, in our district, within 2 years, between 25% and 50% of the people who come into our clubs have left. Didn't work out. Well, you can get depressed about that, or you can think between 50% and 75% are still here. That's the nature of marketing, trial and repeat. We've got to get people to try the product if they're going to become good, strong Rotarians. And we've just got to accept the fact that for some people it's not going to work out. The final thing I ask every club to do is take risks. Try new stuff. Be a mission-driven club. The Coca-Cola Company's mission is something along the lines of refreshment within arm's reach of desire. Now, there's nothing in that mission statement that says anything about cola or sugar or carbonation, or that's a product. Now, when I was a boy, there was only one kind of Coca-Cola. Still the kind of Coca-Cola I love and drink today. I mean, I'm very much a fan of Coca-Cola. But the Coca-Cola Company realized that if they wanted to accomplish that mission, if they wanted to provide refreshment within arm's reach of desire, that maybe they needed more than one kind of Coke. So now there are all kinds of Coca-Cola today. There are all kinds of other non-Coke branded beverages that company markets because they are mission-driven. There are no Rotary police anymore. Chicago realizes this problem that we have, and they realize they're not going to figure it out in Evanston. They've said to the clubs, you do what makes sense in your community to accomplish the mission. And if what you're doing is helping you accomplish that mission, keep doing it. But if what you're doing is not, then don't be afraid to make a change. There's been really one kind of Rotary for 112 years. It's the kind of Rotary I love. But we have to realize that for 99.9% of the people of Georgia, they've either never heard about it, they don't care about it, or it's not right for them. So do not be afraid as a club to change, try new things, experiment. If it doesn't work, stop doing it. But don't be afraid to take risks. Be mission-driven. I'm a Rotarian because by being a Rotarian, I set the right example for my family. I'm a Rotarian because by being a Rotarian, I'm going to live longer. I'm going to live longer and healthier. I'm a Rotarian because by being a Rotarian, I strengthen Atlanta, I strengthen the community that is Georgia, and I strengthen the community that is the United States. And I'm a Rotarian because it is my best shot to leave a mark for good on this planet before I die. I want to thank you all for everything you do for your club, everything you do for Alpharetta, everything you do for Rotary. And I love you all. Thank you.